These are just some of the various racial stereotypes which have surrounded different ethnic groups for hundreds of years. Many wonder where these stereotypes start. We're here to tell you that they didn't just start from word of mouth. They came from movies, TV shows, and more recently, social media.
Asian characters in the early days of Hollywood mostly appeared in the form of racist cliches, whether it be mysterious, menacing villains or laughable caricatures such as Mr. Yunioshi in the Audrey Hepburn movie Breakfast at Tiffany's. His stereotypical English accent and cranky personality may have been just a joke, but nonetheless intended to mock Japanese people. Another stereotype Asian Americans were faced with in the 1960s and 70s was the mighty-whitey mellow-yellow dynamic. This shows a powerful white main character with a submissive Asian love interest and has caused many Americans to believe that Asians were exotic, meek, and weak. By the 1980s, media representation for Asian Americans had slightly grown due to the iconic actor Bruce Lee. The popularity of Bruce Lee and martial arts movies led to the impact of the "all Asians know martial arts" cliché. In addition to all of these stereotypes in media, many of these Asian roles are played by non-Asian characters. Many argue that, as there are already so few roles for Asian actors, let alone roles that are not offensive, white actors should not be cast to play Asian characters. Media has gotten better at showing true representation, but situations of yellowface are still evident.
Hispanics have been portrayed by the media as lazy, unintelligent, greasy, criminal, and alien. Their contributions culturally, economically, and historically have never been adequately represented. Instead, Hispanics in general, and American Hispanics in particular, have been the victims of racist stereotyping in an unfortunate string of offensive images and portrayals. Some of these portrayals bring us into the 4 general Latino and Latina stereotypes which have circled around the global media, movies, and TV shows. A popular and over-romanticized stereotype is the Latin lover. The Latin lover is the epitome of a Latin male sex symbol. The look. The Latin lover is always seen as handsome because of his exotic and foreign nature. Behavior. He is romantic, passionate, and has a strong Latino accent. He is good with women, often taking them by either force or a fit of passion. He uses his sharp, sexy glares, musical talent, or dance moves to get what he wants, especially when it comes to women. This type of character is usually placed in American melodramas. Another stereotype regarding Latinx culture is the domestic. The domestic is usually portrayed as a Latina or Latino that works as a maid and or gardener for a wealthy, predominantly white family. The look. May or may not be short, overweight, older, and poor. Behavior. They usually only speak in either broken English or just Spanish. They are sassy, often very religious, and most of the time given the comic relief line. Predominant stereotype for Latina women is the harlot. The look. The harlot is always a leggy Latina woman with large breasts and curves. Much like the Latin lover, men find her attractive because of her exotic nature. Behavior. She is passionate, lusty, dramatic, hot-tempered, selfish, and oftentimes called a sex bot. Men in movies often use her for sex and then shortly after get together with the heroine. The harlot is sometimes portrayed as the sexy villain of a romantic relationship, oftentimes trying to create a wedge between the main couple.
Since the beginning of Hollywood, African Americans, or Black, were never allowed to have the opportunity to become actors, so instead, they were replaced by white actors who would paint their skin with black paint and portray themselves as savages, rapists, and murderers. This trend was called blackface. When blacks were allowed to act in movies and television shows for the first time, they were usually cast as loyal servants, butlers, and other lower positions because there was a belief of not wanting to see black actors and actresses show their full potential, but rather to treat them as an inferior race. In fact, this era of film enforced racism in order to hinder them. Now, racism, in a sociological term, is a stronger type of prejudice used to justify the belief that one racial category is somehow superior or inferior to others. It is also a set of practices used by a racial majority in order to disadvantage a racial minority. As black actors started to emerge, Black men were usually cast as thugs, drug dealers, and anything to portray them as dangerous criminals and an easy target for police officers to commit brutality and incarceration. Even though it's a way of life for some black men to live this way, this shows that there is an issue within the social class, not the people. Black women are often categorized as ghetto, angry, and rude by nature. This created a negative image for black women in their school, workplace, and even their experience as wives and mothers because they are always expected to act and talk ghetto and to be the one to start problems with their temper. This is all an act of prejudice and stereotype. Prejudice refers to the beliefs, thoughts, feelings, and attitudes someone holds about a group, and it is not based on experience, but a prejudgment originating outside of the actual experience. Whereas stereotype are oversimplified generalizations about groups of people, usually based on race, ethnicity, age, gender, and sexual orientation. Some can be positive, but others, like the media, are beyond negative. Today, there has been an increase of African Americans excelling in films and leading TV shows like Hidden Figures and Empire. Overall, all of these representations of the black community continues to hinder the diverse cultures and talents that this community has to offer.
Even though these offensive stereotypes have been a huge part of American film history, modern producers and writers have been working hard to break these demeaning cliches. 21st century movies and TV shows have shown such efforts of representation by attempting to cast non-white actors and actresses. Although this is a huge step for modern-day culture, we must not ignore the lack of diversity which still envelopes some of huge Hollywood productions. Whitewashing is still a common phenomenon. Allowing a controversial topic such as this to be suppressed in modern-day media is no longer acceptable.